Hello, welcome back to the channel. My name is Lisa Elvin Stoltari, and I am a genealogist and a passionate traveler. For the last several years, I've been teaching each fille du roi or king's daughter and getting to know their stories a little bit better. There are over 700 of them, and we're now on episode 210. So we've come a long way, but we've got a long way to go. Before we begin, let me show you ways that you can support the channel. The first are ways for you to stay in the know. So subscribe, like, notify. Every time you do a like, it kind of sends those logarithms out. So that's a very powerful tool as well. The next couple of ways are ways to help the channel grow, which is Coffee, which is a one-time payment, and then we have Patreon, which is a monthly subscription. And then we also have the super thanks that YouTube lets me do now that I've reached 1,000 subscribers. Thank you to all of you. And I also have my PayPal button on my Have Roots Will Travel website. So thank you to all of you who have helped me thus far. Really appreciate your support and enthusiasm for what I'm doing. So let's get started and get to know our fille du roi of this episode. For episode 210, we are featuring Madeleine Belly. My instinct is to say Madeleine Bailey, but I suspect it's Belly. This was a viewer request. And it's also, when I looked in my files, one of my dear teenage best friends, who's still a really good friend to me now, this is also her great grandpa. So let's have a look at Madeleine and see her journey. Madeleine was born in 1647 in Paris, France. Her parents were Guillaume Bailly and Barbe Sillier. She is from the 4th arrondissement, the 4e arrondissement in Paris. It's also known as Hôtel de Ville. It's situated on the right bank of the river Seine. The Ile de la Cité has been inhabited since the 1st century BC. It's one of the oldest arrondissements, when it was occupied by the Parisii tribe of the Gauls. The right bank was first settled in the 5th century. Since the end of the 19th century, Le Marais has been populated by significant Jewish population, and being at the heart of that community, there are a handful of kosher restaurants and Jewish institutions. And the 4th arrondissement has been known for many, many years as a place of culture and openness and just the basic, when you think about Paris, you think about just the joie de vivre, and this is kind of what it's renowned for. The church that she would have been baptized in was called l'Église Saint-Jacques de la Boucherie, or the Church of St. James of the Butchery, which was a church that was built around the 12th century. Its name was derived from the patron butchers who did their trading in the Halles market not so far away. The church started off as very small, and it was continually being expanded during the 14th and 16th century. It was during the latter age that it was finally completed. A magnificent structure adorned its very Gothic structure. Besides, it was also a pilgrimage. It was decided in the 1500s that a tower needed to be built. And so that is what remains of Le Tour Saint-Jacques. And that is the picture of Le Tour. The church no longer remains. It was destroyed during the French Revolution, as so many were, but the tower still stands. So that is something for you to look at and gaze and know that Madeleine was baptized in that area. In both her parents, she came on Le Jean-Baptiste on August 15, 1671. She brought with her a dowry worth about 200 pounds. The groom that she would select and who would select her, his name was Guillaume Vanier de La Fontaine. He was born in 1645 in a commune called Honfleur in France. Pierre Vanier and Jacqueline Gaillard are his parents. As you can see by the circles on the map, he is from the Normandy region, and the Calvados is the département where Honfleur is found. It's one of the most picture-perfect towns. It's very, very visited. It was spared much of the damage in World War II, so it kind of remains intact. So it is a beautiful port city. And we also have the Église Sainte Catherine, which was completed in the 15th century, which presumably would have been where Guillaume would have been baptized. After almost 11 months in New France, Madeleine finally married Guillaume Gagne, which I think is 11 months is a long time to wait. She wasn't that young. A lot of times they waited when they were 13 or 15 years old. So, um, don't you want to know, like, have an interview with them? Why did it take you so long? But whatever the case, this is the marriage record that they have. So they would first settle down in Quebec City. Let's review a little bit about this place. It's the capital city of the province of Quebec in Canada. 500,000 people live directly in Quebec City to this day. Quebec was originally named by the Algonquins, which in their native tongue meant where the river narrows, and Quebec City lies where the St. Lawrence River narrows. Samuel Champlain founded the town here in 1608 and called it Ville de Québec, or Quebec City. The city walls which surround it still date back to this time period, making Quebec City the only city with remaining city walls north of Mexico. I've chosen two of the most iconic places in Quebec City to kind of illustrate where Madeleine and Guillaume were at in that time period. We have La Maison Jacquette, which is the oldest private residence. It was established in 1675, so it would have been around freshly made when they were there. And the Petit Champlain is a shopping district that is said to be among the oldest, or the oldest in North America. Then we have several maps. And a map and an illustration that kind of depict what it felt like back in the day. So let's have a look at where the family goes next. So finally, the family would settle at Charlebourg, which is now a borough of Quebec City in the northeastern part of that city. And it once was its own separate place, but during the 1990s or 60s or 70s, they amalgamated. The origin of Charlebourg begins with the concession of the Seigneurie of Notre-Dame-des-Anges in 1626, and the seigneurie encompassed a great deal of land. By 1665, the new intendant of justice, our famous Jean Talon, set out to establish 3 new villages further north on the plateau. This caused, as you can imagine, friction with the Jesuits, who were the seigneurs of the area. The first of the villages consisted of a 25 arpents square. So let me show you on that map, Charlebourg, okay? So you can see it, and then you can see the square, and you can see inside that square with all the spokes, it looks like a wheel, a star shaped. And then you've got that little square. Well, that little square would represent where the church would go. And all of the land would face the church, point to the church. Normally, you can see in the upper part of that map, you can see the linear tracks that had always been. The tracks had always gone to the river before. This was a brand new kind of concept. They did 3 of them here in Quebec. There's one, I believe, in Manitoba. So it's a very, very rare kind of settlement pattern, if you will, but very beautiful. And you can see in the 1960s, it has retained that kind of spoke-like wheel, star-shaped, however you want to call it, feeling to it. And obviously what Jean Talon, in my mind, what he was trying to do is have the church as the centerpiece of the town and kind of controlling the town as well. This is the Saint-Charles-de-Borromée Church that eventually grew from the 1696 picture of it that we have. And you can see where Charlebourg is on the map. So it's really north of Quebec City. And in 1976, that's when the city of Charlebourg was merged into a lot of municipalities were merged into, and then in 2002, Charlebourg was merged into Quebec City. So it becomes one of the suburbs. And so I just wanted to point out that this is where they made their life. So they were among the earliest pioneers of this area. So they would have 6 children in all. Anne-Louise would marry Julien Leblanc and have 13 children, 10 of whom would make it. Julien's mother was Suzanne Rousselin, who is a fille du roi who we have not yet profiled. Marie-Madeleine married Jean-François Martel and had 6 children, all of whom made it. She then married François Barbeau at 43 and had another child at the astonishing age of 46. Nicolas would die in infancy. Jean would marry Marie Marguerite Hott and have 3 children, all of whom made it. And then he would marry Marie Charlotte Chamat and have 6 more children, all of whom would make it. Marie Marguerite would marry Charles Boyer and have 1 child who did make it before her early death at 31. Pierre Thomas would marry Marie-Anne Brousseau but did not have any children before his early death at 23. I draw your attention to the 1681 census where we find them at Charlebourg. Guillaume Vanier de La Fontaine, Madeleine, it's actually Magdalene, that's what they're calling her. Children are Anne, Marie-Madeleine, Jacques, Jean, and who is 4 months at that point, and they have 1 gun. In August of 1687, Guillaume was away on a military mission against the Indian. As he was making his return to his home, his gun accidentally went off and he was killed. He is buried at Montreal's Notre Dame. Very, very tragic. After her husband's death, she did not marry. Madeleine did not marry, but she did have a natural child with a father who is unknown. That little girl was born in 1692, but did pass away in 1695. By 1697, she was ready to give love another chance, and a soldier by the name of Joseph Fernando, who was born about 1643, we don't know where he's from, captured her heart, we hope, and they were married on September 27, 1697, in Charlebourg. Joseph would be the first to pass away. He would die in 1718. It's thought he was a victim of the smallpox epidemic that was going on at that time, and he is buried at Notre Dame in Montreal, actually. And they would have been married approximately 20 years at that, or 19 years, or 21 years, 21 years. So that's, that's pretty good that she had that, that kind of time with him. Madeleine herself would pass away many years later on March 27th, 1734, at the incredible age of 86. She would have 79 descendants. Here are some of my favorite resources. I want to zero in on Nos Origines. That is a free site. I use it almost daily. It's a great, great site to just kind of get a handle. It's almost overwhelming, some of the detail of the information. Have a look at it. Put a name in. Remember, it usually doesn't give you much information. You have to start really from the older ancestors on forward rather than the latest, because for privacy reasons they're not linked and that sort of thing. So try to pick a grandfather that's been gone for a long time, that sort of thing, and you'll have great luck with it. So Madeleine was a very strong lady. She was able to carry on after her husband's tragic death and not succumb to the immediate need to get married. She, in fact, defied, society's morals and had a child out of wedlock and cared for that child by herself, from what we gather. And then finally, she did find love again, and she was able to make a new life for at least 21 years. So we're grateful for that as well. And she would leave us 79 descendants. So she was a very strong lady, and I think that we need to bless her memory and thank her for her courage in showing us how you keep going on when times are tough. So thank you, Madeleine. We appreciate what you did. And I appreciate my patrons and supporters. Thank you so much for your support and your enthusiasm for the work I do. It really keeps me going. So with that being said, I will see you on episode 211. Until then, au revoir.